Hello. Uh, this today is the third installation of my YouTube channel here. So today I'm going to do something a little bit different, a little bit more organized. I have a little bit time to prepare for this rather than just speak extemporaneously. So today I'm going to try and keep it within 10 minutes again, but I'll probably go over. But I hope not to go over too much. If I start to, I'll cut it up into smaller pieces. But today I wanted to do a brief history, perhaps very brief, history of the Russian German, ethnic Germans in the Russian Empire and the Soviet Union from 1763, the Manifesto of Empress Catherine II, inviting foreign Christians into the Russian Empire, up until 2005 or so, the last part of the, there, where you finally have a mass slowdown, almost a cessation of the emigration of ethnic Germans out of various former Soviet states, particularly the Russian Federation and Kazakhstan, into the Federal Republic of Germany. So the first thing, perhaps the name. Let's break this down. The term Russian German, the term Russian refers only to geography, not in any sense of being ethnically Russian in terms of ancestry or descent. And this is important. For some reason, there's always on Facebook and other places these arguments that claim that it should be German Russian, which makes no sense when you look at the original German terms, Russlanddeutsche, or the Russian term Rossiyske Nemci. Obviously, in both these cases, you have Russian first referring to geography, the Russian Empire, and then German referring to ethnicity as defined by ancestry, descent from people who are German by culture, particularly language. Now, obviously, that also opens a can of worms, the emigration here starting in the late 18th century. There is no single German standardized dialect. Uh, there still isn't, but Hochdeutsch, of course, is the official language generally spoken. But we recognize these various dialects from Hesse, Baden-Württemberg, and other states of contemporary Germany from where there was large-scale immigration in the late 18th and throughout the 19th century into the Russian Empire as being German. The other thing, of course, that defines them separately as not being Russian is religion. Most of them Lutherans, significant minority Catholics, and then a number of other religions, most notably Mennonites, Anabaptist tradition settled in the Russian Empire, but none of them being Eastern Orthodox or Pravoslav. So if you look again as the terms in the German and Russian languages, obviously, you translate it back. A German Russian would be an ethnic Russian in Germany. So Russian German is the proper term, the proper English translation. Even more proper as far as being direct from language be Russia German without the N, but that doesn't make any real sense in English language grammar, and it's quite ugly sounding in my ear as well. So we're going to go with Russian Germans, like everybody else, and this corresponds with other diaspora groups that we find in the Russian Empire and the Soviet Union: Russian Koreans, Russian Greeks, Russian Finns. Right? You don't use the Korean Russians. That I've never even heard that term, thank God. But perhaps it's because the scholars dealing with ethnic Koreans in Russia and the Soviet Union a bit more advanced than some of the people arguing this term on Facebook as far as knowing the linguistic roots here. Okay, so in 1763, 22nd of July, Empress Catherine II, who herself was from what is now Germany, for who married Peter III, and then became empress after she helped assassinate him, uh, issued a manifesto inviting foreign Christians into the Russian Empire to settle, and they would be given certain privileges, most notably freedom from conscription, freedom of religion. They would not have to convert to Orthodoxy. They could maintain mostly they're Lutheran, again, the largest minority are Catholic. Religious uh, faith, hold their own churches, and the villages are organized along religion. They don't have mixed uh, Catholic and Lutheran settlements, or mixed Mennonite and Lutheran settlements either, or mixed Mennonite and Catholic settlements for that matter. So they're allowed that, freedom from taxation, uh, communal self-government, a whole bunch of privileges are allowed. They're settled on the Volga River for a couple reasons, but the primary one is that the nomadic peoples to the east, the Kazakhs, and the south, the Kalmucks, have been raiding various Russian villages, and there's a flat area there, steppe, basically no defense. Goes all the way to Moscow. Well, the Kazakhs never sacked Moscow. The Crimean Tatars, who are conquered, the Crimean Khanate, by Catherine II, and that what allows for the settlement under her grandson of ethnic Germans in Crimea and Ukraine, did sack Moscow. So, and it had been sacked from the west as well in various times, and it's been sacked from the east, of course, earlier under the Mongols. But the worry here was the attacks from nomadic. Now, this is another thing you always see. The Russian government didn't know who the hell the Kazakhs were, so it called them Kyrgyz. Now, the division ethnically between Kazakhs and Kyrgyz was not nearly as sharp back in the 18th century as it is today. Most of the distinction culturally, ethnically between the two nationalities develops in a very strong way in the 1920s and 1930s under Soviet tutelage. But all you have to do is look at a map, and you will see that the Volga region, the area where the Volga Germans were settled in the northwest of Kazakh, northwest of what is today Kazakhstan. The Volga German ASSR, just northwest bordering the Kazakh autonomous Soviet Socialist Republic. And then later, after 1936, the Kazakh Soviet Socialist Republic, same territory, but it's upgraded. And then Kyrgyzstan is in the east, in the southeast, bordering what is today China to the east. But geographically, obviously, the Kyrgyz proper could not have gotten to the Volga German settlements. The people that could get to them were the Kazakhs in what is today Western Kazakhstan. The Kyrgyz at that time, however, were known by the Russian government as Kara Kyrgyz, Black Kyrgyz, sometimes Wild Mountain Kyrgyz, and the Kazakhs proper were called Kyrgyz, and this is only fixed later officially, really in Soviet times, as far as the official government ruling over these people is concerned. So that's another thing we always see. So the raids on the Volga German settlements after they settled there, starting in 1764, the first settlement, are not by Kyrgyz people, even though it says Kyrgyz on there. That's because the Russian government didn't know who the Kyrgyz were, right? And while there are many cultural similarities between the Kazakhs and Kyrgyz, they are definitely distinct people in terms of the way they view themselves. And certainly there are a number of cultural differences, including the languages. My wife and her family are Kyrgyz. We've gone to Kazakhstan a couple of times, and when she is in Kazakhstan, when her family members are there in Kazakhstan, she does not use Kyrgyz to speak to the Kazakhs because even though the languages are related, they're distant enough that they're not really intelligible. So my family, when we go to Kazakhstan from Kyrgyzstan, we speak in Russian, which is a common language between the two peoples. Now, a lot of the linguistic difference gets hardened in the 20s and 30s with the standardization under the Soviets. But still, you can see, even though related, right, they're not the same, even on the level of being mutually intelligible languages for the day-to-day conversation. So that's something there. This is taking much longer than I thought, so I'm going to divide this up into actually multiple segments because I don't want to get longer than 15 minutes for one. So we've got to the basic settlement here. Now most of the settlers were coming from northwestern Germany, particularly Hesse, to the Volga settlements. And the main reasons, of course, in addition to the pull factors, these privileges being given by the Russian government under Catherine II, are the push factors. There had just been the fighting of the 7-Year War fought in the German states between Prussia and France. The 7-Year War is known to most Americans as the French and Indian War, as it was fought in the North American colonies. The British were siding with the Prussians against the French and fighting against the French and their Native American allies in North America. At the same time, there was fighting on the European continent. But this is a push factor. War brought about high taxes, brought about conscription, brought about community destruction. And of course, the Russian government was offering people who traveled to settle in these colonies on the Volga, as long as they were Christians, freedom from taxation, freedom from conscription. So it was considered to be a pretty good deal, although was raged from the Kazakhs, bad winters, obviously alien area. The first couple of years were quite difficult to settle. Not the golden era yet, although they later on, as we'll see in the series, which it looks like it's going to be quite long. I had no idea it was going to take me this long to go through. I thought I could do all the way up to 2005 in 10 minutes, and it's already almost 13 minutes. So next time we will deal with the settlement of the Black Sea region, originally starting in the 20th of February 1804, manifesto by Alexander the First, who was the grandson of Catherine II, and the origin of the Black Sea Germans. But at least we got the settlement of the Volga Germans here. I guess it's going to be a long slog. It may not be done all consequentially. I will just look for the tag Russian German. So this will be Russian German 1. I'm going to try and cut this out for exactly 15 minutes. But the thing to think about here, we have here an interesting case in that, unlike most groups, even diaspora immigrant groups, we don't have a real date for most of these. But here, 22nd of July, 1763, we have a single document. We can date the origin of the Russian Germans, particularly the Volga Germans, coming into the Russian Empire, settle in the Volga region. We know the dates of the founding of the various colonies, starting in 1764. This is very young, but even here we can see, if we go on, in terms of culture, in terms of ethnic identity, in terms of the types of relationships they have with surrounding people, that there is in this short time, 1763 to 2005, a number of changes that distinguish them as a separate subgroup from other German-speaking peoples, and certainly from other peoples in the Russian Empire and the Soviet Union, on a variety of bases, but most importantly, their self-image, the way they view themselves because of their history and culture, and connection to the various lands that they've lived in. They keep moving, of course. There are people on the way. Folk auf dem Weg. Keep moving from place to place. All right, so but we'll continue with the Black Sea German settlement the next time I broach this topic. But I wanted to do something a little bit serious. I'll try and explain it to lay people here a little bit who might be watching. So until next time, auf Wiedersehen.